Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. I know there are still some folks jumping on the call. For those of you coming in a little bit late, we had a few technical issues. We've got all of those sorted out, and we're just so happy to have you here today. I just wanted to thank you. This is our fifth and final webinar in our fall webinar series. We've just been blown away, honestly, by the response by all of you and for those of you joining us. And we're thrilled again to have John Kennedy with us here. He's going to be wrapping up his culture webinar series and talking about creating a culture of engagement. And so before we get going, just a couple housekeeping items. First and foremost, you guys are all in listen only mode. That said, we absolutely love interaction. So we're going to be capturing questions as we go through the webinar series. John will pause at a few different points during the webinar. So if you have questions, we can pose those to him. Feel free to use the chat icon or the Q&A icon. The webinar is recorded, and I have something really exciting to share with you. John and his wife have created a really amazing website for Proven Winners. There's all kinds of not just the recordings from the webinars themselves, but also a lot of different PDFs, a lot of tools for you to utilize and capture. John's referenced a number of those during the webinars. So he'll talk more about that. He'll share the link with you. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to John.
Thank you very much. I'm going to continue here, screen share, and that brings me to my front. There we go. I'm going to diminish myself. I'm sure there's a word for that, but technically it means I'm going to not see myself as I'm speaking, and we're going to go ahead and kick off here. So good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy 1 week out from Thanksgiving. Happy closing to the year. Happy getting through another interesting year, where the topics that we covered, myself and others as well, this isn't just the John Kennedy show for sure, were very relevant to what we're all continuing to manage our way through, or as I attended a conference 2 days ago in Virginia, power through was the whole theme of that. And we began with creating a culture of attraction. A big challenge for a lot of folks. How do we get folks that might be thinking or rethinking about their career and maybe getting out of the industry that they're currently working in, ours? And how do we look for folks that might be getting out of careers that they're not interested to be able to come and consider us? So we talked about the culture of attraction. Simply put, build it and they will come. So we had a lot of time and attention put towards the importance of creating a culture worth having people want to come and be part of the workplace. And it's more than ever important to be able to feed folks, grow folks, and give folks the values and the food and the things that make them want to be able to come work. So at this conference I spoke at a couple of days ago, study showed in at least the tourism industry that between 40 and 50% of the folks that were coming to be employed within the tourism industry were being referred by people within the industry. And I believe that there's probably similar numbers to be the case when it comes to the green industry and the garden center world as well. If you've got a great culture and your employees are engaged in that culture, they will then speak well about that culture to other people to say, hey, come work here. If you don't like where you are, we've got that. So leveraging your inside team, it's an inside job, as we talked about it, has people attracted to you, right? Then, so they come and work where we're now working with you. How do we retain them? How do we keep good people staying? And the answer, although many, but one of them was to get rid of the bad people that you keep keeping. You know, the addition by subtraction model that we discussed in our last session last month had a lot to do with good people who are working in an organization where leadership and ownership is not taking a stronger approach to holding people accountable, setting expectations, rewarding those that do a great job, coaching up those that aren't, and possibly letting go of the recalcitrant employees that just choose to not change. And as stated in the last video, I'd rather have a few less people that are very much more committed than more people where a few of them are less committed. So instead of having 12 people, maybe we have 10. Oh, we need 12. No, you need 10 really good people. And we talked about that. The principles of the Container Store. We hire only really good people. In fact, they said we would rather have one great person than 3 good people. So being accountable, utilizing performance reviews, making sure that we're coaching people up is part of the retention. And we also talked about the importance of motivating them in the workplace and all of that. And as Jessica had stated earlier, a lot of the references that I've made, a lot of the content that we've developed and I talked about have now been placed into one singular, easy to find place. And that'll be introduced to you at the end of this session, which brings us to the third installment, creating a culture of engagement. Engagement. Now that we've attracted them, now that we retain them, how do we plug them in to a bigger purpose? How do we engage our team, ignite our team, accelerate them to higher levels of success? And that's what the premise of this particular session is about. Real quick as a reminder, because I'm never assuming that you've been following along in the last 2. If you're jumping in on the third one, welcome, welcome, welcome. There are 4 stages to creating a culture. Okay. And the first stage of creating a culture is called an event. So when a culture has an event, like a safety accident in the workplace, that's when typically things change, right? So an event drives change management and cultural shift. The second step then becomes behavioral. So because we had an event like a safety injury on the job, our behaviors are different. We start to be able to really look out. And if you see something, say something. And everybody's looking out for everybody else to make sure that we're all safe. Well, if everybody's doing something, we're going to find out later in this session that maybe nobody owns it because I thought that everybody else was doing it. So behavioral change only lasts for a fairly short period of time. The stickiness, the traction, another term we'll use today, the traction of engagement and cultural shift and change comes in the third step called systems. You got to have systems in place. We can't just be all motivating people and chatting about it, communicating about it, and behavioral shift and change occurs. There has to be a systematic way to change. So today, in creating a culture of engagement, we're going to talk about a system that drives that type of engagement. A few folks that I know in the green industry are already engaged in this system. One of them I shot an onboarding video for in Ohio earlier this year. We're finishing up the final touches to that, which looks awesome, by the way. Another one, I'll be flying out to Fresno, California and working on developing their system to drive engagement and measurement and metrics. And this concept is called the great game of business. Now, some of you know me well enough. You've been to Cultivate or other events, and you've seen me present the great game of business. So we're going to talk a little bit about it here as a system to have culture shift towards engagement. But as an extra bonus, and a love to Jessica and the Proven Winners brand, we're going to go ahead and offer a video that can help you with your team and everybody that might not be here today to watch how the great game of business can be incorporated as a cultural system of change management dealing with engagement. So let's first start with transformation. If we are going to transform and build our business and grow our business, there would be wisdom that we would want to be able to build and grow your team. You are muted now. I don't think so. So riding the blue train, we discussed earlier in the video series, and it talked about a mindset. So there's a culture of a workplace, right? But then there's a mindset as well. And the mindset of somebody that is willing to be engaged is oftentimes referred to in my training circles as being on the blue train of change management. Yep, that works. Hey, let's give it a try. Hey, I know we tried that before, but let's try to make it better. Those are the types of things that can come out of riding a blue train of change management, culture, and mindset. However, like for every yin, there's a yang, right? For every right hand, there's a left hand. There are also cultures that are on the red train of thinking. And the red train of thinking is disengagement. The red train of thinking is that's not going to work. Or we've done this before. Why are we going to try to do this again? So to set the stage of culture and mindset, I do highly recommend the book Riding the Blue Train that talks about transformation of your business through people. It's always a people thing. It'll always be a people thing. You can have all the greatest processes in the world, but if you don't have the people who are in alignment, who are engaged, it becomes a difficult challenge. And then you have turnover, which then becomes a habit trail where you're constantly running on a treadmill trying to get the new person in. For the record, reminding us of what we spoke about the last time in relationship to a culture of attraction, always be recruiting. Always be recruiting. Don't wait for somebody to leave before you put an ad out. Always be looking for somebody great. At a restaurant, if somebody's doing a great job serving you, has a great attitude, a great willingness, a sense of humor, kind of rolls with the punches and deals with stuff and handles difficult situations well, I'd hand them a card and say, hey, if you ever get tired of working here, we'd love to have you at our particular place. So you should always be recruiting because it's always about the people. So with the people in mind, making sure that's the first two stages of this webinar series, attraction, retention, and motivation and engagement of them. Let's now talk about what gets in our way. People are curious by nature. We bring emotion to the equation. We bring past history and we bring biases and we bring thought processes and sensitivities and oftentimes a core value system that may not absolutely align to your business. And so when I work with organizations in establishing a culture, we talk about core values. Cultural norms is sometimes a term that is used, but core values. And it is often that a core value that we discuss is a value of trust. It's a matter of trust, as Billy Joel sang years ago on the album, The Bridge. And you know how old I am if I'm actually calling it an album. But the lack of trust, the absence of trust in an organization can be a real big hindrance. In fact, the foundation is lost to try to strive towards engagement. Now, this is based on the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And Patrick walks through a wonderful way of being able to overcome the obstacles, the hurdles that are in the way of a team becoming amazing and ultimately engaged. It's one of those books that you would read fairly quickly. It tells the story of certain people and the roles that they play in the organization. It's a fictitious organization, but as you read the book, you're like, I know who that person is, and I know who that person is. All those characters in that book oftentimes line up to the people that you know you work with as well. But in this book, which is wonderfully written and easy to understand, he talks about the absence of trust. And without trust, as a core value for our teams to function and engage with each other, it's going to be a very difficult, steep hill. And the reason why we lack trust is because our unwillingness to be vulnerable, to speak our mind, to tell people how we feel about stuff. You know, I grew up as an Irish kid in a large Irish Catholic family. And if you had feelings, the answer was keep it to yourself. Go to your room if you get a little too emotional. We don't have time for that. So oftentimes our upbringing allows us to hold ourselves pretty close. We don't become vulnerable. And if that's the case and we're not sharing with each other how we think or feel about stuff, then we're fundamentally flawed in our foundation of trust. So as I work with great organizations around the world, and certainly in your industry as well, we do trust building as a foundation building for a team to become engaged. We've already attracted them. We're already looking to retain them. How do we now plug them in and get them engaged in the process? So trust matters. As we move up this triangle, the next part that has to be overcome as a hurdle or an obstacle is conflict. How do we voice our opinions on things? How do we not become accusatory, pointing fingers at folks, but to become a little bit more open in saying, here's how I feel, here's the situation, here's our core values that guide us in decision-making. And what we currently have right now is going against our core values. So when you have a great team that goes through this training process of a culture of engagement and works through the 5 dysfunctions of a team, we give them the tools to be able to manage conflict, to be able to discuss conflict, to be able to resolve conflict. There are 4 levels of conflict. We won't go into too much detail about that today, but the level of conflict that we most typically have in the workplace is level number 1, the most basic element of conflict, which is miscommunication. I thought you meant this. I misunderstood that. I read that email as sarcastic. Hey, who puts bold and exclamation points? I got the sense that you were coming at me a little hard, so I responded accordingly. And that level of conflict, of misunderstanding, is oftentimes the root of most conflict in the workplace, as well as at home, by the way. So the way the teams are dysfunctional is they have this artificial harmony. Yeah, we're all getting along. We kind of play happily, but we're backstabbing each other in the break room or chatting about somebody else on the information text. We're like, did you see what he just did? Oh my God, I can't believe it. Did you see what he wrote? Oh my God, I know. Did you see what she's wearing? Oh my God, I can't believe it. And up front, we're like a duck. Everything looks good, but underneath, there's just a heck of a lot of work going on underwater. So the ability to educate a team, and I love this part of my work, by the way, to be able to navigate conflict, to be able to resolve it on their own at their level without having to go to management or go to the owners and say, you need to talk to her or you need to talk to him, to give them the tools to resolve conflict on their own. Boy, what a great team at that point, because they're resolving their issues and becoming more efficient in their problem solving. They're not waiting for somebody to impact something that could probably change on their own. So these steps, 5 as you will, are hurdles. And if we have trust and we build that as a foundation builder of trust, our core values, and we're able to then navigate our way through the conflict issues and really honestly talk about it. And again, the book describes this extremely well. They take the team on a retreat and 1 or 2 of them don't come back, which is sometimes the case. The third challenge in an organization, once you get through the emotional elements of conflict and trust, is no clear understanding about what's going on. Ambiguity. There's a study that was done where 87% of the organization's employees stated that they couldn't state one clear objective of the organization. One, just one. What are we here to do? So having a vision, which we'll talk about, having clarity and commitment about what the vision is about is key. And unfortunately, because we're busy, small family businesses, small businesses, local businesses and whatnot, we're wearing so many different hats, we might not be able to have the time to strategically think through what the commitments of the organization and the values and the vision and the mission are. And if you don't have that, it's a lot of gray. There's no black and white. It's just a bunch of gray. And I've seen this. And we spoke about this in the onboarding video discussion. On the website that we've created, with the permission of proven winners, by the way, you'll be able to witness some of the onboarding video samples that I've referenced previously. And you'll take a look at it going, oh, wow, I see what he's doing to help an organization build a value structure to help them guide themselves through change management. So we become less ambiguous when everybody knows what we're supposed to be doing. The example I gave previously was in Jacksonville, the Mattamy Homes, where we got everybody aligned to a common purpose, a common goal of 90% customer satisfaction by December 31st, 2021. That's the vision. Everybody understands it. Do they trust each other? Not yet. So I'm doing some 360 feedback. We're having an anonymous feedback opportunity and forum to be able to have people give feedback anonymously first to build trust. And once we build trust, we can then get through conflict. And once we get through conflict, we become clear in how we're going to go ahead and execute our game plan, our vision of 90% customer satisfaction by December 31st, 2020. They've been in the bottom third. I just got the report last week from Cliff, the guy that runs the joint, and he said, Kennedy, we've come up to the top third now. We are 4 places out of first place. And when I was there 2 weeks ago, since I saw you guys last, the whole team rallied, but the sales and the builder team all rallied and said, we want to be the number 1 division in the entire organization now because of the momentum that's occurring. And that comes out of trust, that comes out of conflict resolution, that comes out of clarity of commitment of vision. But if you're not holding people accountable, if what they said they're going to do, they're not doing, it all comes crumbling down pretty quickly. So we've created an accountability forum. Some of you who work with me, you know what it's called. It's called Start Moving Mountains. And what I do from wherever I am in the US and wherever else I travel, I'm able to check in on that platform and say, hey, yo, Chuck, you said you were going to do these things. You were supposed to be due to be completed by this date. Currently lagging in that. I become the accountability coach when leadership or ownership either doesn't have the skill set or in some instances doesn't have the time. And the reason why oftentimes organizations are not holding people accountable is because there is no real standard of excellence to begin with. What are those standards? What are the standards of excellence that we're looking to be able to drive? Does the team know what they are? And not only are they knowing what they are, can they measure it? And not only can they know what they are and measure it, are they being held accountable for it? A very simple way is through 5-star standards. 5-star standards is something I've been cluing into for the last few years. And there'll be a sample of one up on the site that I'll introduce you to in just a little bit. 5-star standards means that these are the 5 things that we're committed to do to be able to drive the customer experience to be better than anyone else in the industry. 5. And oftentimes as you go on an Uber, you'll be able to say, how was things? It was a 5-star standard. It was a 5. It was a 4.5. It was a 4. So we're able to metric it. We're able to manage it. We're being able to report it. And then we can say, hey, was there somebody that went above and beyond? And if their name is used, there's a spiff. There's a little note at the end of the month, a little $5 bill that says, hey, you were mentioned. And every time you mentioned, you make $5. However, the accountability factor comes in when if you were mentioned in a negative way, we need to put you in a little bit of a coaching opportunity. Hey, can't say that this one example is your personality. Stuff happens, I get it. But it was mentioned. And far more people were found doing something right, and your name popped up as doing it maybe not as right as everybody else. Let's take a look at this opportunity as a teachable moment, and let's coach you up to be able to get better so that this doesn't happen again. That's where you have standards and accountability hand in hand. So I'll give you an example about that at the end of the session. Last but not least, and unfortunately, the thing that gets in the way the most to create a team that is in alignment to be able to drive engagement on whatever it is that they want to accomplish, increase in sales, decrease in cost management issues, increase in the number of accounts that we have, holding on to our accounts and their retention, anything that you would ever want to change, you could manage and measure. We'll talk about that, right? But oftentimes, and you've heard this before, there's no I in team. There's no I in team. At the top, my ego is not my amigo. I start to make it about me instead of about us. And when I start to make it about me and not us, I'm focused on me and not results. The inattention to results, the focus on myself and how that means to my improvement within the organization, how that's going to advance my career in the industry or what I think is best for my own self is certainly selfish. And what we would want to become is selfless. Selfless, meaning let me think of myself less. Let me think of my team more. How do I get my ego out of the way? How do I let go of my ego? And that's important for anybody. I remember hearing it as becoming right-sized. I have to remember that, right? I want to make sure that I'm right-sized. I saw something today on LinkedIn by a friend of mine named Jill, and I'm going to probably misquote it to some degree. But confidence, she said, is not being able to feel as if you're the smartest person in the room. Confidence is when you walk in a room and you don't feel like you have to be compared to anybody, that you take the ego out of the way. Jill, you'll never see this video, but I wanted to thank you for that because that stuck. So as we build trust, as we navigate conflict, as we establish standards through commitment and accountability and remove the ego out of the way, these hurdles or obstacles to a team functioning and engagement, now we've got the people side set up. How long does this take? It depends. I've had good history working with organizations where we move through this fairly quickly. Within the first 2 meetings, we've got a real good sense of rhythm. 1 or 2 people self-elect to leave because they're like, I don't want to be part of this. Good. We would rather have less people more committed than more people less committed. But when you finally get your stride, what starts to happen is they work like a tribe. And they don't want to invite anybody into the tribe that the team doesn't have some feedback about. So the hiring of somebody joining the team becomes a team effort, not the employee or that works in HR or the owner or the leader or the manager. The team starts to decide, who do we have that we want to make sure is on our team because it's going to be able to represent all of our best interests. So those are the dysfunctions. That's what I felt was a good approach to team engagement, is to be able to look at what are the hurdles or obstacles that are in your way. And now that we've taken time to get that there, and in the example I've used in Florida, in Jacksonville, a lot of momentum, a lot of accountability, a lot of standards, but underneath, there's still a little bit of resistance on the trust factor. So although the numbers look good, underneath, the team is not functioning to the point that the numbers could be better. So we're all going after number 1, and there's a couple people in the way, and we're working through that. So I'm going to stop for just a second. I see a chat. It came up a little early, so it might have been, hey, I can't hear you or something like that. Jessica, if it's okay, I'll just stop for a moment, pull up and see if there's any questions that we might have so far about the people part, the culture piece, or the 5 dysfunctions of a team before we move into the more process system side of plugging people in to be engaged.
Sure. So no questions on the chat. I actually have a question for you though, John. Obviously, as we look at our core group, our core team, this has a ton of application. What happens? So how is that communicated, or how would you recommend that's communicated as you're bringing staff members on? Because I think that's an important part of you're part of this team, and these are the things that this is our vision, and here's where we're going. When does that start? Does that start day one? What do you recommend here?
I think it starts before day one, before they even get into the spigot and come through the hose. We should be able to, as we're looking to attract talent, all the way back to the very first video. If we want to attract them, that I have clients that now, I think I shared with you the BISR with Live Trends, and why would you want to work at Live Trends? And that video really gave everybody a sense of like, wow, purpose. We all are in this together. So I would say that setting up the core values and why we want to work here and what our team looks for and espouses as a group organization should happen before they're even hired. Weed them out of the way. Hey, this is how we are. This is how we behave. These are our core values. This is how we work together as a team. This is how we function as a team. This is how we're engaged as a team. Does that sound of interest to you? And if they're like, not really, okay, I'd rather not bring them on to begin with. Once they're then onboarded, there's an onboarding video that goes into a deeper detail about our core values, what part they play, and how we treat the customer, and more of that policy, procedure, and process piece. But I'm a big fan of why would you want to work here to begin with, so that you could get them at the front door, on the porch of the house, before they even enter the door. Have them understand what they're up against. For some, it's hell yeah, I want to come through that door. That sounds like a place I want to be working, and I like it. But if you're promising that, Jessica and everybody on this video, if you're promising that, you better daggone deliver on it too. Don't make the promises that we all get along and it's a great team and here's our core values and we abide by them every day and this is what we do. When they come in and sign the dotted line that I want to work here, we should be able to deliver that. If I may, shout out to Willoway Nurseries. I'm going to give you much credit. There are 7 core values that they have. And I visited not once, but twice and walked through all the departments, in the loading dock, in the sales group, out in the fields, over at Premier Plant Solutions. I'm going to give you guys a shout out. They abide by their core values on a daily basis. Never sacrifice safety, play to win, take ownership, support the team. Those are 4. I'm stumbling for the next 3. My apologies. I can't remember everything. But as I looked at them, they not only have them posted, they actually abide and live by them each and every day. Does that answer the question?
That's perfect, John. And then Fred had just a really quick question. He said he doesn't need an explanation. He missed the 4th stage, though. So can you give him 1 or 2 words so he can?
Oh, no, thanks. No, he didn't miss it. I didn't say it. Event, behavior, system, then culture. The 4th step is that our systems become cultural. So you didn't miss anything. That's on me by not closing that loop. An event typically changes behaviors. Behaviors only last for a period of time. If you put systems in place, step 3, then you drive a culture. So thank you for allowing me to make that more clear. Well done.
Perfect. Okay.
Anyone
I think
else?
we're ready, John.
Okay. So now we've got the people side, and boy, we've got only 30 minutes left. I mean, this stuff takes, for me, working with an organization, the first visit of a whole day dives deep into this whole element of establishing our core values and what they mean. So, granted, yes, we're gonna walk through this, and I'll give you tools to be able to utilize that at your business level. If there's any other questions beyond, the website that will direct you to, you could just send an email and go, watching this video, had a couple questions. I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to answer. So you have access to me just as long as you need me to be able to support your needs. I mean that sincerely. So the next phase then of creating a culture of engagement, now that we've got the people, we're going to transform and build and grow the people. Now let's put a process into play. And there are 6 key components of driving engagement. And this is an interesting book that I read, a little orange book called What the Heck is EOS? I'll answer it for you. Your entrepreneurial operating system, that's what it's called, your entrepreneurial operating system. So just like your computer, this is a way that you run your business. And there are 6 key components to run your business. One ties into the discussion that we had earlier with the issue of engagement, and the 5 dysfunctions of a team is vision. Does everybody know where they're headed? We want to be at 90% customer satisfaction by December 31st, 2021. They're trending now at 86.5, 87. So they're on track to do it. They've really leaned in on certain things that they needed to have happen. Another client I worked with, how do we get to a nickel in profitability? They started out at 1 penny. 1 penny on the dollar. After all was earned, they kept a penny. Anemic profitability, quite frankly, and not much for a rainy day fund if things go south or a pandemic happens. So through implementing EOS and the next phase that we'll talk about called the great game of business, we centered everybody on the vision of 5 cents on the dollar, the nickel. And everybody knew in every department of this $30+ million growing facility, everybody in every department knew exactly what it was that they were doing in engagement to be able to drive the nickel from their department. And over the course of about 3 years, working with this particular client, we went from a penny to 11 cents. I mean, dramatic change in growth. So if you're looking for those types of results, you're in the right place watching this video and learning how you drive engagement of a team, because that's what it is. Literally, people want to show up to work because they either have to. I don't get much out of somebody that shows up to work because they have to, or they show up to work because they want to. I don't know about you. I'm going to build a culture of want. I'm going to build a culture where people show up to work because they want to. So the ambiguity piece of what are we doing here becomes not ambiguous. It is black and white. The nickel, 90%. 2 cents on the dollar in 2022 is another client that I'm working with. They're currently losing money right now. They're fairly new to the business. So they got to turn the corner. And we didn't want to jump to a nickel or a dime. We thought, let's do 2 cents in 2022. That's their entire vision of next year, 2 cents in 2022. May have mentioned that one previously. So vision, shorter, sweeter, clear, concise, simple to understand, easy to get your head around. That's where vision is important, right? So the next thing is, well, what data do we have to drive our vision? And where are we currently when it comes to our scores for customer satisfaction? And they were in the high 70s and low 80s. So we had data to show at what phase, while building the home and having the home then be handed off to the homeowner, did we see that there was a drop in the customer experience. Everybody's happy buying a home at the signing of the table. So when you say, how did it go? Hey, the bank approved me and I now have the keys to the house. 100%. The challenge became 45 days after they bought the house, some of the things that they had noted weren't quite fixed yet. And every night before they go to bed, they're lying in their bed and they're like, that crack is still there. And I've called them 3 times and nobody's answering the call. So it was the 45-day issue that was the data that we usurped our game plan from. And the thought was, let's not improve that. Let's improve getting the house ready before it goes to closing. So our vision moved from the 90% customer satisfaction. The process that we were going to do it was based on data that we derived from the customer satisfaction surveys. And so the process is that we want to have homes 100% ready by closing. There's a lot of effort that needs to happen in order to get a home 100% ready prior to closing. See, the mindset of the builder was, that's what warranty is for. We get the house ready to be occupied and then they do all the fixing. Well, when you have a builder mindset that says that I don't have to complete the home, and when I hand it out, it's not my job at that point, we needed to change the mindset of the builders. We needed to change the mindset of the people. They roughly work with about 30 different builders in the market. 4 of them are no longer working building homes for this company, because they were not willing to take ownership and responsibility for their part of delivering a home 100% ready by closing. So we brought on new builders. And to Jessica's point earlier, we let them know when we were looking at hiring them as a builder to come build for us, that our job is to make sure that the home is 100% ready prior to closing. And there's the guy, Bart. I think I might have mentioned this previously, but Bart builds a beautiful home. And Bart's now going to become the new spokesperson for this particular building company. Bart builds a beautiful home. We also put a SWAT team together, 3 salespeople and 3 builders, to be able to talk more about how they could communicate effectively with each other, communicate conflict, build trust, set standards, and get out of the way of ego. So the dysfunctions were starting to be eroded. The systems were put into place. We instituted EOS. We now have a key vision and understanding of what we're doing based on the data that was available to us, set processes into play with the people in alignment. Yeah, they're going to be issues. Life. We're going to have folks that are going to stumble and fall. And we're like, okay, mistakes happen. Stuff happens, right? It's how we react and deal with it and mend fences and move forward instead of what most organizations that are non-team oriented do, disengaged in their way in which they go to business, is that they point fingers and blame. Well, that's your fault that you did that. And when you get that type of situation, you are disengaged as a team and you are then disengaged as a business, and the customer picks up on it pretty quickly. They're able to go, something's wrong here. I feel the energy of the place when I walk in, and there's a dysfunctional feel. There's a tension that's not momentum building and leaning in from an experience standpoint. It seems to be disengaged. And you feel this when you walk in. Humans are very intuitive that way. So we want to make sure that we're able to iron out issues. So each week we have a meeting where we talk about what are the things that we need to stop doing. It's not working. What are the things that we need to start doing? We haven't started it. Let's give that a go. And by the way, what do we want to continue to do? Because we're doing good things and we're doing good things consistently. So 3 questions once a week that each department asks helps us dealing with the issues. What do we need to start doing to improve our ability to have 100% closing and 90% customer satisfaction? What do we need to stop doing because it's just not working? And what do we want to continue to do because we want to celebrate the things that we're doing well? And when you do that, you get what's called traction. And when you get traction, that's momentum. And when you get momentum, people start leaning in and changing. And interestingly enough, intuitively, as us as humans, we literally do want to be part of something that's successful. We want to be part of something that's bigger than ourselves. We want to be part of something that's changing for the better. And if I'm not able to report that, if I'm not able to show that traction, then I don't know if we're doing well or not. I mean, imagine going to the doctor and them having a test that they give you, and they're like, well, here are your test scores. That's the data. Well, what do? I don't know. Figure it out. But your triglycerides are high, so you might want to cut back on drinking, and your sugar levels are high, so you may want to cut back on sweets. But other than that, I just really don't know. Without a knowledge of where I currently am, benchmarking, and then how do I, by effort and vision and people and processes and dealing with the issues that I move forward with data, how do we know that we're improving? So you go back to the doctor and like, wow, your cholesterol now, both combined, under 200. Boom. That's data and traction combined with vision. So these 6 steps, fairly simple read again. I just always want to give credit to folks that write things better than me. A lot of material that I offer is mine, but if somebody did it better than me, I'm going to let you know about it. This is a really cool book. And this book is derived from something that I've been touting for a very long time called The Great Game of Business. And The Great Game of Business has 4 specific tenets, 4 things that need to be put into place on a daily basis. 1, communication. We'll talk about it, call it a huddle. 2, education. Are we getting better at something? Do we understand the why, which is another one of the values for Willoway? Understand the why. Do we understand the why? Do we educate people as to why they're doing the work that they're doing and why it's important to do it this way and why it's important to do it right and why it's important to do it consistently right? If we're educating and communicating, we have a maximum amount of engagement. And when you have engagement, communication, and education, I'm learning something new each day. I'm being communicated how I'm doing, whether it is informally in an attaboy or attagirl, or on a scoreboard to some degree, or a high five if that's the case, or spits and bonuses based on performance. If we have that, along with a scoreboard, then we start to play to win. And when you play to win, you've got engagement. when you have people coming in going, all right, we need to move 221 bags of this today because our goal was 1,500 for the month, and we're currently about 400 behind with a few days left. Let's go ahead and see if we can move 200 on a weekend, on a Saturday, bags of, you name it, Happy Frog or Bumper Crop if you are a member of the Master Nursery Garden Centers. So when you get teams involved in a focus of an item, Bumper Crop or Happy Frog, just as examples, right? And they know that if people are buying plant material and we know that it thrives better and it lasts longer and it blooms appropriately, so these proven winners are actually amazing far longer than expected based on the fertilizer that's supporting it and the soil and the amendments that are around it. Now all of a sudden your average transactions tick up, that we're not only having them buy proven winners, but we're giving them the things to be able to continue to have it be a proven winner long after they put it in the ground, surround it with the love of what it was actually grown up with. We talk about that story. Similar to your dog, you don't bring your dog to the kennel and have them just take whatever food that we think that they should eat. We give them the food that the dog is used to. Same thing with your plants. We want to make sure that the customer goes home with what materials that plant was surrounded with and what materials that plant will thrive as it's placed into the ground, if that's the case. So when you have communication, education, and engagement through people wanting to win, you've got a real cool place. So let me introduce you to the great game of business. The great game of business is predicated on something called a mini game, mini juegos, if you will, in Spanish speaking. And a mini game is just a simple thing. It's a short-term activity designed to correct a weakness, something that we suck at, or an opportunity to be able to drive change management. So it's either an improvement area or an opportunity to be able to drive success through the company. There's a goal that everybody knows about. That's the scoreboard. There's also a reward for winning. So as an example, Happy Frog with the client down in Florida, we had bags of it that we set aside. So what's the data tell us? We sold 150 of these last month. Okay, let's try for 250 this month and improve by that percentage point. And so everybody put together a game plan. We want to introduce it to every plant material that would support it. And we put a scoreboard together and who was selling more Happy Frog. And it ended up being pretty cool. Client in Bermuda, we wanted to make sure that they had a perfect day where every day when something was delivered out to the customers, everything that they ordered was everything that they got. Fill rates, if that's the case. If you really think about it, you could measure and metric anything you want. So let's put together a game plan. How do you design a process of the great game of business? It's actually pretty simple. Choose a target. What do you want to improve? What do you want to improve upon? Or what's an area that we know that we want to change because it's going in the wrong direction? Cost management or revenue generation are usually the two areas that I support in the work that I do with my clients. Let's come up with a mini game for cost management, and let's come up with a mini game for revenue generation. And we put together a game plan for that. Set the improvement goals, identify who's going to be involved, determine a time frame. I'm from the school of thought, the shorter, the sweeter, the better. I don't want to put together annual goals because people don't really do that type of thinking. You put together a New Year's resolution that you're going to lose 10 pounds. When do you really start doing it? Whenever. So I'm from the school of thought, the shorter, the sweeter, the better. So monthly would be about the farthest out that I would go. And then monthly is broken down to 4 weeks. And then those 4 weeks are broken down into days. And those days are called huddles. And we communicate and educate every day what we're working on, register to the scoreboard. And at the end, want to make sure that we've got an ability to be able to reward people for it. So, $5 gift cards for coffee. You might think that that's not a big deal. It's a big deal. I've had people move mountains, literally move mountains over a taco truck pulling up on a Friday afternoon. And if we get all of this done this week and unload all these Christmas trees that are coming in, if we get them all stood up, unloaded, and ready to go by the weekend, I will have a taco truck come in on Friday and buy you all lunch. Boom, all of a sudden, everybody's leaning in. So you're familiar with this process. Do something better than we're doing already, reward them for their effort that they've done, and then keep track of the success that's going on is the premise of the great game of business. So I believe now Belmont Nurseries, who I'll be working with next week in Fresno, they are now my 22nd client that has instituted the great game of business. So if you have more interest in what I'm talking about beyond today and the video that supported you, just reach out, give me a jingle, we'll talk. Here's some items. I mean, if you're wondering what could we measure, the answer is anything, anything. I had some skin cancer on the side of my face, and I went to the dermatologist, and he said, well, "What do you do professionally? Because you've been here a couple of times." I'm like, "Well," I told him, I work with organizations, and I make good organizations better. That's it, through strategy, consulting, and training. And he goes, "Well, how would I, as a dermatologist, track if I'm doing better? Because if you don't come back, that's a good thing." And I'm like, "That's true. But there's some other things that you could track, like employee retention. Because sometimes when I come here, there's new people at the counter, and maybe you should keep the people that you're currently working with," which was interesting. He had a scalpel right to my face. That would be not a good time to tell somebody something about their business. But my point being that you can measure anything. You can measure anything. Days in receivables, we have that issue sometimes when the economy starts to turn and we have our customers owing us money and they're trying to stretch out their dollar as long as they can. But at that point, you become a bank instead of a grower. So we created a mini game for days in receivables, and we didn't want it to get it past whatever number that time was. 45 to 60, I think, was the answer. Many people were over 90. Some were 120. Some folks hadn't paid in a year. We cut them off at the knees, but that's an example. Production man hours is another really great one. Productivity, inventory reduction, sales to gross margin, product yield, delivery accuracy. How often do we get it done right? Labor efficiency, sales to labor ratio, average transaction, the number of transactions. How do we cost save by downtime on fuel use? Oftentimes we fire up the engines of all the vehicles and they're all sitting around idling for 25 or 30 minutes. Okay, let's start managing that. How much is somebody, if they're driving, earning based on them delivering something? What's the amount of hours that they drive based on the amount of products that they're delivering? We could never be short on things that we can measure to have our team engaged, but you should have your team engaged in deciding what those are. I don't ever really come in and tell a company what to do. I don't. I guide and navigate and facilitate them to come up with the ideas on their own, because when people come up with their ideas on their own, they're far more willing to be engaged in change management. So I don't come in and say, "Here's what you need to do." I said, "Hey, well, let's come up with a vision that we can all agree to." And then they do. Okay, well, what are the things that we need to do in order to have that vision come true? And we put those into place. Typically, it's people side and process side. Okay, if we have the people side, who do we need? And on the process side, what do we need to improve upon? And then how do we know we're doing it well? How do we measure it? How do we metric it? How do we scoreboard it? Scoreboard's so important. That magical Michael Jordan movie recently that came out on Netflix, I think. And the number of 3-point shots that he took right at the last second with his tongue hanging out. And then the walk that he did after he made the shot and the team won and they were all happy about it. The reason why that happens so often is that there were a lot of things going on at one time. He knew what the score was. He knew how much time he had left, and he knew the best place to be able to have the best shot at it. Does your team know that? Do they know how much time it takes to be able to do something? Do they know when they do it well that they're going to be rewarded for it? And are they communicated in relationship to the traction piece? So I'm real good and fun and advising and directing and facilitating and shepherding change. I don't like telling people what to do, but the scoreboard is one of my favorite because it changes every day. People come into work and they look at the scoreboard and they're like, "Okay, cool. I know what we're doing yesterday because they changed it. I know what the goal is for today." And that starts to attack the issue of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. We now have standards. They're not ambiguous. We know what's going on. I trust the people that I work with that are going to be able to commit just as much as I do. And when you have all of that, things go really well. And it is worth working for. It is worth working for. I'm going to finish up with 2 quick slides, and then I saw a hand come up real quick. We'll take some questions as we finish up here with some moments remaining. The huddle is important. This should happen every day. Start with the scoreboard or the success board to say how we're doing. Shows the big picture of the company overall. Assign ownership and accountability to what we need to do and who needs to do it. There's an old adage, if everybody owns it, nobody does it. So in some of the scoreboards that I help create and design, we literally have a running tally of things that need to be done today. Hey, just put your initial next to it that you're going to grab it so that we know who owns it. That's called a whip board. We've spoken about that before, a work in progress board. So here's our goal for the day. Here are the other things that we've got going on. Here's a couple other additional items that we need to have completed. I call that your +1 list. So do your job and everything that's required of you as an employee going towards the scoreboard, and then pick one more, +1. So we call it a +1 board. On the WIP board, the work in progress board, is pick one more, put your name next to it. And if I'm a manager of a department or a leader of an organization or a team, and I see that there's one individual employee that seems to take more initiative and write their name more often next to the +1, I'm probably going to give them a nice gift card at the end of the week or the end of the month and say, hey, take your kids to dinner. It's obvious that you're leaning in. You're fully engaged. Everybody else is engaged, but you're fully engaged. I want to reward you for that. And I think that that drives even more want. So I'm showing up to work not because I have to, but because I want to, which is really the whole core of engagement. Keep it short and sweet, as I talked about. Create engagement and buy-in by having fun. The great game of business is predicated on let's all work on something collectively together, and let's also have fun doing it. And in the description that Jessica sent out, partially the reason why you're here, it goes back to where we started. Riding the blue train. Riding the blue train talks about an end result or a goal or an outcome. And that outcome of a culture of engagement is called a line of one culture. It should be worth pursuing. It's the ability to create a solid and unified force of people and energy. You can sense it. When you're with a group of people that are working on a common cause, you sense momentum and direction and energy. If you've ever done sales calls and we're doing our sales blitz and everybody's on the phone, banging the phones and talking to customers. And if somebody's, closed the sale, bing, and they're like, oh man, she got a closed sale. I'm going to get a bing too. You can sense that, and momentum creates momentum. So line of one culture out of the book, Riding the Blue Train, says that it's the ability to create a solid and unified force of people and energy focused on accomplishing the same mission. And when you get that type of an alignment, clarity and vision, core values that support it, leadership that engages it, holds people accountable, you have a line of one culture and a culture of engagement, which is, honest to golly, folks, worth investing in, and it's worth pursuing and doing. More than half of our life is spent at work when we're awake. Why would we not want to be engaged in what we're doing and enjoy it? So big call to order as we finish up the year. I'm going to put this up here as we answer questions. If you don't mind, Jessica, maybe you can field them to me. But before we do, on the left-hand side is a QR code. It was on death's door until the pandemic, and the QR code has been resurrected. Everybody's using them now. We're at restaurants so that you don't have to touch a menu. So, hey, we've got a resurrected QR code. Take your phone, put it up to it, and that'll drive you right to the website that Jessica was talking about. And it has all three of the presentations. It will have, by next week, all three of the recordings. It has the Great Game of Business video. It has all the content that we discussed in relationship to performance reviews. It's got examples of onboarding videos. I mean, everything that we discussed in this 3-part series that I've been fortunate, grateful, and blessed to be invited to be involved in with Proven Winners. Thank you again. Are all housed in one location and one website. If your QR code doesn't work because you're over 50 like me, and you're like, what do I do with this? Just go to the website down below, johnkennedyconsulting.com/proven winners, and that'll take you there. And you'll have everything that you need to make 2022 more successful than you deemed possible by incorporating not only what you learned from me, but by the others as well. Thank you again to Proven Winners, and let's open it up for Q&A. What do we got?
Thanks, John. So at this point in time, I know Michelle raised her hand. I asked her if she could type in her question. We're kind of waiting on that. The one thing that I can say sort of in the interim as we wait for that is I've had the pleasure of working with John on this, on creating that line of culture and working for an organization that really went through all of those steps. And as an employee, it was probably one of the most gratifying things to be able to do because we were all pulling in one direction. So much so that there was a gentleman that painted, do you remember the blue rocks, John? He painted blue rocks for every single person in the organization. And so it really is engaging, and the mini games are fun. That's something as an employee, it was really enjoyable to sort of see, but not just what the sales team was doing, what the whole entire organization was doing. So the board is a great idea.
Yep. Well, thank you, Jessica, very much. I'll send a check, $20. But thank you for your kindness in saying that. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a great ride. It was good stuff.
Yep. We do have a few more minutes. I'm not seeing anything pop into the chat. The one thing that I would remind everyone, obviously, John has information on the screen. We'll be sending out an email with all of this information as well. And with that, certainly just want to thank John sincerely for his time, for all of the information that's been shared. We love it. We would love your feedback. So if there are some other things that you'd love to have John delve into, we will be having a winter webinar series. So we'd love to hear from you on that. Invite you to join us. And just thank you, John, for your time and for sharing your gifts. We appreciate it.
Complete pleasure. And thank you for your faith you placed in me. And to all that are here today now, and Michelle keeps raising her hand, but I think that the answer is, Michelle, if there's a way to type it into the chat area, we can answer your question for you.
Yeah.
That'll buy us another minute. For those that are here now, happy Thanksgiving in the holiday season. For those that are going to be watching this, as I understand it gets launched out and a lot more people come after the recordings are done, we appreciate your investment in time and your commitment to change management and to your team. It speaks volumes for your interest in wanting to make things happen. Wanting it is one thing, doing it is another. We've given you the tools. The rest is up to you. And if I can help, or Jessica, by the way, we're happy here to support you in any way we can. She raised her hand again. Michelle keeps doing this.
Okay, so here's my thought process on that, Michelle. I would say if you could email, here's Fred.
Number 6.
Yep.
On my chat.
So Fred just said, shout out to John, reach out to him, and he had a response within minutes. So Michelle or others, if you have questions after the webinar, I know, John, you've opened that up graciously.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Email John, email me. We'd be happy to make sure that we get the two of you connected. So
absolutely.
Absolutely. Right. Great. And with that, we'll sign off. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jessica. And take care, everyone. We'll see you again, I'm sure.